All right, today we're going to peel back the layers on something that, believe it or not, affects all of us, whether you're running a business or just managing your own money. We're talking about the code of ethics for accountants. Think of them as the guardrails that keep our whole financial system from flying off the road.
I mean, think about it for a second. We hand over our most sensitive, private financial data to these professionals. But it begs the question, right? Who's watching the watchers? What's stopping them from, making a bad call or looking the other way? That's what we're going to get into.
Okay, so let's jump right in. It all boils down to this idea of a moral compass. Every single professional accountant is supposed to operate based on a core set of principles. And this isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's the absolute bedrock of their entire profession. And here they are, the Big Five. These are the fundamental principles holding everything together: integrity, objectivity, competence and care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. You can think of them as the 5 pillars that the entire house of trust is built on. So first up is integrity. It sounds simple, right? Be honest. But it's way more than that. It means you have to be straightforward, truthful, and, this is the key part, you have to refuse to be associated with any information you think is bogus, misleading, or just plain reckless. Next, we've got objectivity. This is all about being impartial. It means an accountant's judgment has to be based purely on the facts, not on their personal feelings, not on a conflict of interest, and definitely not because a powerful client is breathing down their neck. Their loyalty has to be to the numbers, period. But, that's the ideal world. In the real world, things get messy. Even the most ethical person runs into pressure. And the code actually acknowledges this. It outlines 5 common threats that can really put an accountant's objectivity to the test. The biggest and most common one, the self-interest threat. This is the classic dilemma where your own personal or financial interests could mess with your professional judgment. It's that little voice asking, yeah, but what's in it for me? And this isn't abstract stuff. We're talking about very real situations. Like if you own stock in a company you're auditing, that's a huge red flag. But it can be more subtle too. Like maybe you lowball your fee to get a big client, which then tempts you to cut corners later just to make a profit. Then there's what's called the familiarity threat. This one is tricky. It's what happens when you've worked with a client for so long they feel more like a friend. You get a little too comfortable, a little too trusting, and you might just lose that critical eye you're supposed to have. And you can see how this would play out, right? If your sister is the CFO of a company you're auditing, that's going to be tough. Or what about an auditor who's been on the same account for 10 years? They might start to accept things at face value instead of digging in with that professional skepticism that's so crucial. So we've got the principles and we've got the threats that are trying to tear them down. Now let's look at what happens when it all goes wrong, when an accountant gives in and actually crosses that line. Check this out. This is a real case where an auditor actually told a client to pump up their sales numbers by including deals that hadn't even happened yet. They were just under negotiation. And why? To make the company look healthier than it was, to trick a bank into giving them a loan. This whole situation brings us to a famous legal quote that really gets to the heart of an auditor's job. An auditor is a watchdog, not a bloodhound. What's that mean? Well, they have to be alert and skeptical. That's the watchdog part. They're not expected to hunt down fraud at all costs like a bloodhound, but they absolutely can't ignore red flags that are staring them in the face. So, the verdict? It was pretty damning. The auditor was found guilty of gross negligence. By failing to be a watchdog and, even worse, by helping cook the books, they didn't just break a rule, they damaged the reputation of the entire profession. All right, here's another real-world example, but this time it's about a different principle: confidentiality. You've got this accountant who, with the best of intentions, gets up at a conference and starts sharing sensitive, private details about his client's business. He thought he was helping the industry. And the verdict here was just as clear-cut. Confidentiality is basically sacred. Your intentions don't matter one bit. Unless you are legally required to share information or your client gives you explicit permission, you keep your mouth shut. That's the only way clients feel safe enough to tell you everything in the first place. So these cases are pretty serious, and that's exactly why the profession has built-in defenses. The code isn't just about what to do after something goes wrong. It's about preventing it from ever happening. It's all about safeguards, practical steps you can take to manage these threats. So what's in the toolbox for staying on the right side of the line? Well, firms can do things like rotate the lead partners on a big account to avoid that familiarity threat.
Or, if they hit a really tricky issue, they can bring in experts or legal counsel to get a second opinion. And you know what? Sometimes, the only ethical move is to just say, nope, we can't do this, and walk away.
And this duty, it's not set in stone, it's constantly evolving. Just look at this comparison. The old school duty was mainly about laws that directly hit the financial statements, like tax law. But now there's this huge shift called NOCLAR. It basically forces accountants to look at any illegal act that could cause major harm to the public, and it gives them a path to report it to the authorities, putting the public interest above all else. And to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, this heavier public duty under NOCLAR is mandatory for auditors of India's largest listed companies. We're talking ones with a net worth over 250 crores rupees. The idea is simple. Focus on the companies where a scandal could do the most damage to the public and the economy. So when you zoom out and look at the big picture, you see it. This code of ethics isn't just some dusty rule book. These are the very guardrails that allow us all to have trust and confidence in our financial system. They're what let investors invest, banks lend, and markets, well, function. So ultimately, that's what this all comes down to. Ethics are not a theory. They are a choice. A choice that often has to be made under incredible pressure when the stakes are incredibly high. And it leaves you with a pretty tough question to think about. When you're the one in the hot seat, which choice do you make?